I handed a complete stranger $1,000 in cash and told him to do whatever he wanted with it. No conditions, no catch. He didn't even ask a single question, he just took it. Then I did the exact same thing to four more people. Different ages, different incomes, different lives. And by the end of this video, one of them is going to do something with that money that you will not see coming. Something that honestly changed how I think about money completely. So stick with me, because this is exactly what happened when I gave $1,000 to five different people. No cameras rolling in their face to embarrass them, just cash, a handshake, and one simple sentence. This is yours, no strings attached. Do whatever you want with it. What happened next taught me more about human psychology than any finance book I've ever read. And by the end of this video, you're going to see yourself in at least one of these five people. Maybe two. Stick around because person number four completely broke my brain. Here's why I even did this in the first place. I've always believed that money doesn't build character, it reveals it. You can talk about your financial goals all day long. You can post about budgeting. You can say you're a saver or a spender, but talk is cheap. Actual behavior only shows up the moment cash is sitting in your hand, and nobody is telling you what to do with it. So I stopped theorizing and I ran the experiment myself. Real people, real cash, real 30-day waiting period, zero interference from me in between. I didn't coach anyone. I didn't hint at what I hoped they'd do. I just handed over the money and disappeared for a month. What came back wasn't just five stories about spending habits. It was basically five different psychological case studies walking around in plain sight. And once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it in your own life either. Let me set the scene. I didn't just walk up to random people on the street. I wanted a real experiment, so I picked five people from very different walks of life. Different ages, different incomes, different backgrounds. I told each of them the exact same thing, gave them the exact same amount, and then I waited 30 days before checking back in to see what they'd done with it. No judgment, no follow-up calls pressuring them, nothing. Just pure, unfiltered human behavior with money. And what I found is that $1,000 isn't just $1,000, it's a mirror. It shows you exactly who someone already is, just louder. Person number one was a 19-year-old college student named Josh. The second that cash hit his hand, his eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. And I mean immediately, within the same hour, he was already talking about a new pair of sneakers he'd been eyeing for months. 30 days later, I checked back in. The money was gone. Not invested, not saved, gone. New sneakers, a couple of nights out with friends, some food delivery he definitely didn't need, and a phone case that cost more than my first laptop. When I asked him how he felt about it, he shrugged and said, "Honestly, it was fun while it lasted." And here's the thing, I wasn't shocked. This is the most common financial behavior on the planet. Psychologists actually have a name for it. They call it hedonic spending, where unexpected money gets treated as fun money instead of real money because in your brain, money you didn't earn through grinding hours at work doesn't feel real. It feels like monopoly cash. Sound familiar? If you've ever gotten a tax refund and blown it on something you can't even remember 3 months later, congratulations. You already know exactly who Josh is because you've been him. What made Josh's case even more interesting is that when I gently asked if he had any regrets, he genuinely didn't. Not even a little. He said the sneakers still make him happy every time he wears them. And honestly, that's a fair point. There's nothing inherently wrong with spending money on things that bring you joy. The issue isn't that Josh spent it. The issue is that he never even considered another option. There was no pause, no internal debate. No, should I put some of this away first? The spending wasn't a decision, it was a reflex. And reflexes, unlike decisions, are exactly the kind of thing that quietly shapes your entire financial future without you ever choosing it on purpose. Person number two was a single mom named Carla, mid-30s, working two part-time jobs just to keep her and her daughter afloat. When I gave her the money, she didn't smile right away. She actually paused, looked at it, and asked me twice if I was serious. That reaction alone told me everything about how tightly she'd been living. 30 days later, I sat down with her again, and this is where it got emotional for me. She didn't spend a single dollar on herself. Not one. She paid off a chunk of overdue electricity bills, bought her daughter new shoes for school because the old ones had holes in them, and put the rest, every remaining cent, into a small savings jar labeled emergency. When I asked why she didn't treat herself to even one small thing, she said something that stuck with me. She said, "When you've been drowning, the first thing you do with air is breathe, not celebrate." That single sentence right there is the entire psychology of scarcity in one line. When you've lived in survival mode, extra money doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like a life raft, and you use it exactly like one. Person number three completely surprised me because on paper, he shouldn't have needed the money at all. His name was Derek, mid 40s, decent corporate job, nice car, the whole image of financial stability. I actually almost didn't pick him for the experiment because I assumed he'd just laugh and put it in a drawer somewhere. But 30 days later, guess what happened? The money was already gone and not on anything memorable. He couldn't even tell me exactly where it went. A dinner here, an app subscription there, some online shopping he barely remembered ordering. This is what financial experts call lifestyle creep, when your spending quietly expands to match your income, or in this case, any extra income, no matter how much you make. Derek wasn't broke. Derek was what a lot of people are these days, comfortable on the surface, but completely unaware of where his money actually goes. And honestly, this one hit me the hardest because it proves that income level has almost nothing to do with financial awareness. You can make six figures and still have zero relationship with your own spending habits. What really got me was watching Derek try to reconstruct where the money went. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through his bank app, and just kept going. "Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one." Over and over again. 5 different small transactions, none of them individually reckless, all of them collectively invisible. This is exactly how lifestyle creep operates in real life. It never shows up as one big dramatic purchase you'd remember and regret. It shows up as a dozen small, forgettable ones that add up to the same result. If Josh's spending was a reflex, Derek's spending was more like a leak, slow, quiet, and only visible once you actually stop and add up the damage. Now here comes person number four, the one I mentioned at the start, because this is the twist nobody saw coming. Her name was Anita, retired school teacher, mid 60s, modest pension, definitely not what you'd call wealthy. I expected her to either save it quietly like Carla, or maybe spend it on something practical for the house. Instead, 30 days later, she told me she'd given almost all of it away. Not spent it, gave it away, to a young couple in her neighborhood who'd just had their first baby and were struggling to cover hospital bills. When I asked why she didn't keep even a portion for herself, she said, "I've lived long enough to know that money moves in circles. If I hold onto it too tight, it stops moving. And so do I." I sat there in silence for a second because that answer wasn't something you learn from a finance book. That's wisdom that only comes from decades of actually living life and understanding that abundance isn't about how much you hoard, it's about how much you circulate. Anita didn't fear scarcity the way Carla did, and she didn't chase pleasure the way Josh did. She operated from a completely different place, one of trust that more would come if she needed it. That's not naive, by the way. Studies on generosity actually show that people who give strategically, without draining themselves completely, report significantly higher life satisfaction than people who hoard, even when their income is objectively lower. Anita wasn't reckless. She simply understood something most of us never get taught, that money is meant to move. I actually followed up with her a couple weeks later, mostly out of curiosity, and she mentioned that the young couple she'd helped had already stopped by her house twice, once to bring her a homemade meal and once just to check in on her. That's not something a savings account gives you back. Anita didn't just give away money, she reinvested it into relationships, into community, into the kind of wealth that doesn't show up on a bank statement, but absolutely shows up in how supported and connected you feel as you get older. It made me rethink what return on investment even means. And finally, person number 5, the one that honestly made me rethink the entire experiment. His name was Marcus, late 20s, freelance graphic designer, income that goes up and down depending on the month. When I gave him the cash, he didn't spend it, and he didn't save it in a jar either. He invested it, split between a low-cost index fund and a small amount into upskilling, a design course he'd been putting off for over a year because he couldn't justify the cost. 30 days later, that $1,000 had already started multiplying in 2 directions, financially in the market and professionally through a new skill that was already landing him higher paying clients. When I asked him why he chose that path instead of anything else, he said something so simple it almost sounds obvious, but almost nobody actually does it. He said, "Free money is the safest money you'll ever get to take a risk with because you're not actually risking anything you had before." Out of all 5 people, Marcus was the only one who treated the money as a tool instead of a feeling. Not a treat like Josh, not a life raft like Carla, not a leak like Derek, not a gift to circulate like Anita, but a lever. Something to be pointed at future growth. So here's what this whole experiment really proved, and I think this is the part you need to actually sit with. The same exact amount of money, $1,000, produced 5 completely different outcomes, and the deciding factor was never the money itself. It was the person holding it. Josh revealed that unexpected money often gets treated as disposable because it doesn't feel earned. Carla revealed that when you've experienced real financial scarcity, extra money instantly gets funneled into survival and security, not luxury. Derek revealed that income and financial awareness are not the same thing, and that comfort can quietly hide a total lack of control over your spending. Anita revealed that true abundance isn't about accumulation, it's about circulation, and that generosity, when it's not self-destructive, tends to come back around in ways you don't always expect. And Marcus revealed the mindset that almost every financially successful person eventually adopts, which is treating money as a multiplier instead of a reward. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, okay, but which one of these am I actually? Here's a quick way to find out without lying to yourself. Think back to the very last time you got unexpected money. Maybe it was a bonus, a refund, a gift, a side hustle payout, doesn't matter what it was. What did you do with it in the first 48 hours? If your gut reaction was to immediately think about something you wanted to buy, you might lean more Josh than you'd like to admit. If your gut reaction was relief, like finally being able to breathe, that's Carla's mindset. And if that's you, please don't feel bad about it. Survival instincts around money are completely rational when you've experienced real lack. If you genuinely can't remember what you did with the money because it just sort of dissolved into your regular spending, that's Derek's pattern. And that one is honestly the sneakiest of all 5 because it hides in plain sight. If your first instinct was to think about someone else who needed it more than you did, that's Anita's energy. And if your first instinct was to ask, how can I turn this into more? That's Marcus. And statistically, that mindset alone is one of the strongest predictors of long-term financial growth, according to multiple behavioral finance studies on windfall spending. Here's the uncomfortable truth, though. Most people aren't purely one of these 5. Most of us are a blend, maybe 70% Derek and 30% Josh, or mostly Carla, but with a little bit of Anita's generosity mixed in. And that's actually good news, because it means your relationship with money isn't fixed. It's a pattern, and patterns can be rewired. The people who eventually shift toward the Marcus mindset, the ones who start treating money as a tool instead of an emotion, usually don't do it by suddenly earning more. They do it by changing the story they tell themselves the moment money lands in their hands. Instead of asking, what do I want to do with this? They start asking, what does this money need to do for me? That one shift in language changes everything downstream. So let me ask you directly, if I handed you $1,000 right now, no conditions, no cameras, nobody watching, be honest with yourself for a second, what would you actually do with it? Drop your honest answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know, and I'll be reading through them because I think the comment section on this video is about to become the most honest financial confession booth on the internet. And if you saw a little too much of yourself in Josh or Derek today, don't spiral about it. Awareness is literally step one. You can't change a pattern you don't recognize. So, recognizing it right now, in this exact moment, already puts you ahead of where you were 5 minutes ago. And one more thing before I let you go. Notice that not one of these five outcomes was inherently wrong. Josh isn't a bad person because he bought sneakers. Carla isn't behind in life because she paid bills instead of treating herself. The point was never to rank these five people from worst to best. The point is that money always tells the truth about where you are right now, emotionally, financially, and psychologically, whether you're ready to hear it or not. The real question isn't which one of these five is the correct way to handle a windfall. The real question is whether the way you currently handle money is actually a choice you're making on purpose, or just a habit you inherited without ever examining it. If this experiment made you see money differently, subscribe, because next time I'm raising the stakes. Instead of $1,000, I'm giving $5,000 to five completely different people. And if this experiment taught me anything, it's that the bigger the money, the more impossible it becomes to hide who you really are. I'll see you in the next one.